Welcome everybody to Write Better Together Afterthoughts : we're going to define speculative fiction for you. Hey, look everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hi, John Myers. Why are we defining speculative fiction?
You tell them why.
Okay, well, so I just learned about this. We were literally just now. Um, but apparently there's a competition going on for speculative writers. Um, and people are disagreeing about the definition of what speculative fiction is.
Beyond disagreeing, they don't like writers who've been writers forever don't even know, like they've never even heard of the term. They're like, speculative fiction, this contest just made that up. No, they didn't. It's existed for
What's this
100
newfangled
years.
term that they're using now these days?
Yeah, and so yeah, and so then they Google it, and then they're getting the Wikipedia definition of it, which is not the definition. And so it's one of those cases where the true definition is getting so watered down, like we all call tissue Kleenex now. That's what's happening to the term
Right, that's
speculative
exactly.
fiction,
Yes.
and we need to stop that.
So how are they what is the Wikipedia article telling them?
So, researchers at Oxford, which I'm going to value Oxford definition over Wikipedia definition, but Wikipedia definition says it's this speculative fiction is this umbrella that carries all of these that covers all these subgenres, and there's so many that definition becomes meaningless in my opinion, and so much so that it's not a definite, like when a definition becomes meaningless, it has no point and it can't be the definition anymore. I'll specifically tell you what all those subgenres are. So the Oxford definition is, and we'll put a link to this in the comments. There's really three definitions that have changed over time, and then my argument is this third one, the Wikipedia one, has made that definition meaningless. So the term speculative fiction has three historically located meanings. That means it's evolved over the time of history. Number one, a subgenre of science fiction that deals with human rather than technological problems. Number two, and this is the one that I agree with, a genre distinct from and opposite to science fiction in its exclusive focus on possible futures. And three, the Wikipedia definition, a super category for all genres that deliberately depart from imitating consensus reality of everyday experience. In the latter sense, speculative fiction would include fantasy, science fiction, horror, and all of their derivatives, such as hybrids, cognates, such as gothic, dystopia, weird fiction, post-apocalyptic fiction, ghost stories, superhero tales, alternate history, steampunk, slipstream, magic realism, fractured fairy tales, and more. So it's basically everything that's not realism would fall under that umbrella.
Everything, literally everything.
Yes.
Which, if everyone is super, then no one will be. That's for my Incredibles fans out there.
There you
Um,
go.
it's too, yeah, it's vague. It's meaningless if you define it that way.
So what did you want to say something about what Gaiman had to say? There you go.
Yes. So this is Fahrenheit 451, and this is the 60th anniversary edition with the introduction by Neil Gaiman. I'll put this in the bookshop for y'all because it's a great edition. It even has commentary in the back with like the book reviews, like early book reviews of this book. Gaiman basically defines speculative fiction in the beginning, and I will say you won't like this, but he says, call it speculative fiction, call it science fiction, call it whatever you want.
Yeah, I don't like that.
But then he uses speculative fiction throughout. So he says, people think wrongly that speculative fiction is about predicting the future, but it isn't. Or if it is, it tends to do a rotten job of it. And then he goes on to say a couple lines down, what speculative fiction is really good at is not the future, but the present, taking an aspect of it that troubles or is dangerous and extending and extrapolating that aspect into something that allows the people of that time to see what they are doing from a different angle and from a different perspective or a different place. It's cautionary. Um, and what I like about that is that it's emphasizing that it's not trying to be scientific and like, here's exactly what the future is going to be. It's instead, um, I feel like, and I don't know where I heard this, but some people have described it as like a petri dish. So like a petri dish is not a real, when you put in something in there and you expose it to those elements, that's not a real representation of exactly what happens in your own body, for instance, but it can tell you, it can predict possibilities in a way, and so speculative fiction is often cautionary.
All right, let me. I agree, and I think we covered it well. Let me correct two things that I said earlier. First of all, I
Sure.
love Neil Gaiman, and I got to see him speak,
Oh,
and
I missed that. I was so sad.
yeah,
I came to right after that happened.
and he taught me something about what, which we'll talk about in a future episode about how you, what platform you use to take your story, how you decide what platform goes into what, or what story goes into what platform. And number two, I said that speculative fiction, the term has been around for 100 years, and it really was not. It's been around since Robert Heinlein coined it for an editorial in the Saturday Evening Post on February 8th, 1947. So we're a little bit short of 100 years, maybe 80 years,
Yeah.
but we're getting there.
Wow. Yeah. And here's why I think a lot of this matters is if you were to query an agent and you said this is speculative fiction, first of all, if you mean speculative fiction by the umbrella term, then your agent is going to say, specify what you mean by that. Do you mean horror? Do you mean fantasy? Like all of those are so different. Choose one. But if you mean speculative, like Fahrenheit 451, then you also need to make sure that that is very clear. You need to be looking at how are the agents defining it. If you're doing a contest that says speculative fiction writers, are they using it as an umbrella term or is they using it as a specific term? So because people are going to use different definitions, it's good to know what the intent is.
I agree 100%.